Welcome to the Mystic Soul Rising podcast. I'm your host, Toni French. Here on the Mystic Soul Rising podcast, we talk about shadow work, inner healing, spiritual awakening, personal power, and the real journey of transformation. Not the polished Instagram version, the real one, the messy one, the one where you question everything. The one where you start realizing the parts of yourself you were taught to hide are actually the parts that hold your power. This podcast is a place where we explore those hidden places together because your shadow is not your enemy. Your shadow is a doorway into deeper self awareness, deeper healing, and the kind of inner freedom most people spend their entire lives searching for. And if you found your way here, there's a good chance your soul is already beginning that journey. So take a breath, slow down for a moment, and let's begin. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the masks that we wear. Have you ever noticed that the thing you're most proud of might also be the thing that's quietly holding you back? Or have you ever wondered why, even though you're strong, capable, and giving, you sometimes feel exhausted and visible, or like something inside you is slowly dying? If that hits, stay with me. Because today we're exploring by combining shadow awareness with your innate strengths and spiritual growth is the key to finally breathing freely again. And trust me, this isn't theory because I've lived it. And let me be honest for a moment. As I sit here starting this podcast, a small part of me still whispers, who am I to be doing this? Who am I to tell people how to integrate their shadows and strengths? If that hits you too, you're in the right place. Because that little voice of doubt, that's the shadow. And very often, it shows up right when you're stepping into something that actually matters. Where the mask begins. Childhood is where our nervous system first learns what it believes will keep us safe. When we're young, we don't analyze situations the way adults do. We simply feel what happens around us and adapt. If a child grows up in an environment where things feel unpredictable, emotionally heavy, or where they had to grow up a little too fast, the nervous system may quietly form a belief like, if I stay in control, if I take care of everything, then things will be okay. It isn't a conscious decision, it's a survival strategy. The body learns that hyper awareness, responsibility, and control are the ways to keep the world from falling apart. And that pattern can follow us well into adulthood, long after the environment that created it is gone. There's a quote from psychologist Dr. Ramani Durvasula that captures this perfectly. Living to please is like living a half life. And when I first heard that, it hit hard because on the surface, people pleasing can look like kindness. It can look like loyalty. It can look like responsibility. It can look like strength. But underneath it, it's often a nervous system that learned long ago if everyone around me is okay, then maybe I'll be safe too. The problem is when we live our lives constantly adjusting ourselves to keep other people comfortable, we slowly disconnect from something essential: our truth, our energy, and our voice. And over time, living that half life starts to feel exhausting because a part of you knows you were meant to live more fully than that. Personal story that I want to share was last week, actually. As I started to get the urge to create videos on TikTok and other social media, and even thinking about putting this podcast together, I didn't know what to say next. My shadow showed up. The part of me that doubts myself, questions if anyone will even listen, and makes me hesitate. It's a cycle I know too well, where the shadow shows up, the doubt and the hesitation creep in, and then you stall. But the power is in how you learn to reset. And trust me, I was stalling out in first gear this week for those old school like me who understand what that means. I didn't have it in me to get to second gear, much less fifth. I found myself stuck in analysis paralysis. I wanted to perfectly explain the connection between shadow work and the Gallup Clifton strengths. And for most people who don't know their strengths yet, I was trying to make them easier to understand. But here's the thing, that pause was not me failing, it was my nervous system catching up with my growth. It was guiding me to see the deeper parts I still needed to integrate myself. And the cool part, when we notice the pattern, we can choose differently. I could have stayed stuck, but instead, I kept creating in other ways. I was building my framework for the first course that I'm putting together. I was building tools for the Mystic Soul Rising tribe so that they can have affirmations and journal prompts for the week. Even when the camera or even creating this first episode felt exhausting, I was still moving forward. And honestly, that's a big part of why Mystic Soul Rising exists. Because for decades, I wore masks: the strong one, the people pleaser, the overachiever, the controller, the responsible one. Each mask was built to survive, especially growing up in a chaotic environment. And every job I've had since I was 14, yeah, I carried those masks there too. I did what everyone needed. I performed. I earned my worth with every task and every problem I solved. I was the invisible people pleaser, always doing, always giving, always holding everything together. And then, every weekend, when I finally had time to rest, I was completely exhausted, even when I wasn't doing anything. And as I laid there in bed, my mind would start attacking me with thoughts like, "You're lazy. You're useless. What's wrong with you?" So, what I'm encouraging you to do is notice your own shadows. Step into the pause and keep moving anyway, because that is how you rise. There's a story I love called The Parable of the Wise Tree. It reminds us that strength isn't something that appears overnight. It grows slowly, season by season. Imagine a young tree in the forest. In the beginning, its roots are shallow, its trunk is thin, and every storm feels like a threat. But with each passing season, the tree adapts. The winds that once bent it to teach it flexibility, the dry seasons push its roots deeper into the earth in search of water, and the storms it survives strengthens the fibers of its trunk. Over time, the tree becomes something steady and wise, not because life was gentle with it, but because every challenge taught it how to grow deeper and stronger. And in many ways, we grow exactly the same way. The experiences that once felt like survival often become the very roots that give us our strength. And this is where something really important starts to reveal itself because those survival strategies we learned, the masks we built, they didn't just create struggle, they also created strength. The child who had to stay aware of everyone's emotions often becomes deeply intuitive. The one who learned to carry responsibility early on often becomes incredibly capable. The person who had to stay strong for everyone else often develops powerful leadership. But here's the key: every strength that helped us survive also has a shadow side when it's operating from survival instead of awareness. And when we start learning to see that clearly, something powerful happens. We stop trying to destroy the mask and we start discovering the strength behind it. So, as we're learning to identify the strength behind the mask, let's break it down. First, again, those masks weren't flaws, they were your survival strengths. They helped you navigate a world that wasn't always safe. So, again, the strong one becomes resilient and full of responsibility. The people pleaser grows their empathy and learns how to collaborate. The overachiever grows in discipline and persistence. And the controller learned strategic thinking and organizational skills. So you see, each one of these masks has a gift tucked inside. But over time, that protection can quietly become limitation. For example, that strong one might actually carry the strength of resilience and leadership, but the shadow side is feeling like you can never ask for help. And so it leads to exhaustion. That people pleaser often carries deep empathy and emotional intelligence. But the shadow side of that is losing your voice in order to keep people comfortable, which leads to overextension and neglecting of self. That overachiever usually has incredible drive and vision, but the shadow side of it can become constant pressure to prove your worth. So that overachiever becomes the perfectionist who's afraid of failure. The controller shadow is resistance to surrender and stress. The goal of shadow work isn't to destroy those parts of yourself, it's to understand them, to recognize where they came from, and to begin integrating the strength without the self abandonment. That's where real transformation begins. Those shadows don't make you bad, they just mean that you haven't integrated the energy just yet. What I'm encouraging you to do now is to notice your shadows. Step into your pause and keep moving. That's how you rise. So today, what I want you to do, if you're not driving or anything else like that while you're listening to the podcast, take a moment and pause and ask yourself, which mask have I been wearing the longest? What strength was it hiding? And what shadow has it created in my life? You can write it down or you can just sit with it for a minute. Naming it is the first step to reclaiming the energy behind it. Breathe, feel it, and let your nervous system start noticing you're allowed to see it clearly now. And before we close today's episode, I created something to help you start seeing these patterns more clearly. It's called the Episode 1 Integration Cheat Sheet. Inside it, you'll see a simple breakdown that connects four things: the mask or persona you may have developed, the core strength hidden inside that mask, and the shadow or hidden cost that shows up when it runs on survival. And then there's an integration path that helps transform it into healthy power. Because once you start seeing these patterns, you can't unsee them. And that awareness is where real freedom begins. Because the truth is, most of the things that we criticize ourselves about were once the exact strategies that helped us survive. The problem isn't that those parts exist. The problem is when we never stop long enough to understand them. Shadow work isn't about fixing yourself, it's about seeing yourself clearly. And when you begin to see clearly, something powerful happens. That mask starts to loosen, the strength behind it becomes visible, and you begin to live from a place that feels more honest, more grounded, and more free. If today's episode resonated with you, I encourage you to download the Episode 1 Integration Cheat Sheet. Spend a few quiet moments reflecting on the masks and strengths in your own life. You might be surprised by what you discover. And if this conversation spoke to something inside you, I'd love for you to share this episode with someone who might need to hear it too. Because the more we start talking honestly about the parts of ourselves we were taught to hide, the more we realize we were never meant to walk this journey alone. Thank you for spending your time with me today. And remember, your shadow is not your enemy. It's the doorway to the strength you've been carrying all along. This is Toni French, and this is Mystic Soul Rising. I'll see you in the next episode.